Real Moms Talking Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Real Moms Talking. I'm your host, Jovana, a mom of 3 beautiful children and passionate for learning languages. And in today's episode, I'm so glad that we are going to talk about how challenging it can be engaging your kids to keep learning and talking more than one language. And on the positive note, we are also gonna go through some already tested and proven to work strategies to nurture your child's multilingual magic. And moreover, we're gonna talk how to make it fun for them and for you to do all this. Making a decision to raise your child multilingual is easy part, I would say. It doesn't really take much to make a decision, not for me at least, but staying true to it and continuing to help your child thrive in 2, 3 or more languages is not an easy task. For my husband and me, it was not really a complicated decision to make. When we found out we are expecting our first child, we knew we are gonna want him to speak in Spanish with my husband and Serbian with me. We never gave it too much thought, I would say, how the fact that we are speaking English between each other is gonna affect him or any of our kids later on. And also we thought that German, since we live in Germany, our kids are gonna learn in nursery and later on in kindergarten. And in the last 6 years, and also still I can say, we are constantly facing different kinds of obstacles that have to do with multilingual upbringing. And maybe it can sound that it all works out of the box and that language switching is always ideal, but there are so many ups and downs on this journey. I would say that even the reasons why we are doing this are defining how we are approaching our kids' multilingualism. And for us, since we are still learning along the way, because it would be so naive to think that we cracked it all and that there is a recipe to success, we are still adapting what we think our goals are. And depending on that, we are adapting how we approach the language learning, basically. And I must say it also depends on each kid individually, because kids' interest for the languages might vary. Kids' ability, not to say talent, to learn languages might vary, but also the circumstances in which each kid is raised are different, at least slightly. For example, our second and third child, they were exposed to German language from the day one due to the siblings, whereas our first kid, he was basically not hearing almost any German till the age of 1. So given that, the situation how different families approach multilingual parenting can be very different, and given that also your language combination and age of kids and all other factors might be so different, I'll try today to give you some general tips that are in general true and helping you on the multilingual journey so you can support your kids' language learning in a very mindful and delicate, or as German would say, feinfühlig way. I love that expression, I guess, because it sounds to me like feeling the kids' feelings in a very, very delicate way. So fine, fühlig. Those that speak German will understand where I'm going with this explanation. But now let's go back from German grammar to the topic. So no matter if you choose one person, one language, or time and place method, or situational multilingualism, minority language at home, or any other method, or rule you established, keep talking in the target language to your kid, because your kid has to have enough opportunities to hear the language, and that part is really important. Also, if your child keeps responding in another language, let's say the language which is spoken in the community where you live, do not get disappointed or upset. They are most likely feeling more comfortable in the language they are responding to you, or they feel social need to fit. Also, it might be that they are lacking vocabulary in the target language. For example, in the 90% of the cases I talk to my kids in Serbian, they very often start by responding in German, and then I repeat what they said in Serbian, give them opportunity to hear and learn how they can say that in Serbian for some next time, and then I respond to them in Serbian further, usually asking them a follow-up question that is naturally part of the conversation we're having, or answering their question if they asked me something. And it is hard, I would say, in the beginning to not fall into the trap and switch to German, especially because I feel quite comfortable speaking German. But by being aware of why am I doing this, I bring myself back to talk Serbian, even if I accidentally switch. And what I love about this approach is that our kids, even though they still most of the time answer in German, they have a vocabulary and ability to have those conversations in Serbian and Spanish. And I know that because when the grandparents are visiting, like it was the case 2 weeks ago, the grandparents from Serbia visited, the kids talk to them in Serbian without any problems. Also, by having this approach, one is not putting any pressure on the kids, but on contrary, you are exposing them in a very indirect way, and they are learning without even noticing it. I myself made that mistake many times in the past to just let it go and switch to German, because it is easier if they are constantly responding in German. But then I noticed that they were lacking words in Serbian, and it was because they were less exposed to it, simply. So talking to kids in the language we want them, that they talk to us, is the very first step in a complex, long journey, I would say. Of course, neither is that the only way to do stuff, nor it always fit situation and scenarios, because sometimes you will want or need to switch the language because of various reasons, like because of other people who are present or involved in the conversation. Nevertheless, make sure your kids are hearing the target language enough in order to learn it. One other way I find beautiful and very efficient is reading books in the target language with your kids, to your kids. You get to transmit the emotion, to introduce new words, or teach them about humor, values, or some other stuff which goes beyond learning only the language. Also, reading their favorite story in the target language will for sure build some positive connection towards the desired language. Similarly, singing songs and watching their favorite movie, cartoon in the target language can get them interested to learn more. We have, for example, a whole set of books in Spanish about animals. Ovejita que vino a cenar, el crocodilo que vino a cenar, el tigre que vino a cenar, which our kids are loving and are very closely listening when dad is reading in the evening before the bedtime. And when they were reading for the first time, they would ask about the words they do not know, because they wanted to hear the story and understand it till the tiniest detail so badly. Also, what I like about the reading is that you get to introduce the words that maybe are not so frequently used in the everyday language, and kids get to hear it that way. So read, read, read. connect language learning to something they already like. For example, our oldest is a huge fan of board games, so we have whole collections of different board games that we play. Middle son also joins the games, and then with Papa they play in Spanish, with me in Serbian. It makes it so easy to introduce the language if they are so engaged. For example, Mensch ärgert dich nicht. They also know as Čoveče ne ljuti se, because we regularly play it in Serbian. With Papa they often play Outgefoxt, which is a detective-like mystery game. So they have to look for pistas, which are clues in Spanish, and have to find sospechosos, which are suspects. So even that kind of words get totally familiar if you are needing them for the game. And normally you would not learn something like that. So you are probably getting the sense, if you have been listening to the previous episodes, that I'm not a huge fan of screen time for very young children. And don't get me wrong, my kids get to watch cartoons or some other shows and get to play a game on tablet, but it is a very controlled environment and time, in a sense of when and how much is very clearly defined and content is predefined, so to say. So they do watch cartoons in Spanish and some kids show in Serbia, but it is more that the listen to the audio books, storytelling and music in our languages. I feel that it consumes them less and leaves them still with some energy to play without being overstimulated, like after watching a cartoon. And while talking about watching, it just came naturally to say that one other thing we do is we also try to seize the moment, and when we are visiting Serbia or Cuba, we bring them to kids shows, theaters, because it is yet another great opportunity for them to use their language toolbox. But visiting Serbia and Cuba unfortunately happens just few times a year if we are lucky. So finding the community in the place or region where we live is a very valuable way to practice the language. And over the years we met many families which speak Spanish or Serbian. Not that many that have the same combination of languages like we do, but many of them which speak at least one of the two languages. And when we meet, our kids still speak with the kids of our friends in German, but they notice that we grown up don't, and that starts some thinking and intention in them to try to speak as well Serbian or Spanish, depending on the situation. And it is beautiful to see how their motivation naturally grows like the tide. So is it easy? No, it's not. At times we are all within our family overwhelmed with languages and language bouquet we got. Are those exact strategies gonna be enough? Maybe yes, maybe not. But as I said, every kid, every family is different. What is common for all of us is that being mindful to our kids and ourselves is important. Acknowledging that it's one amazing but complex process of raising multilingual people, being open to learn, to try new ideas, setting realistic goals definitely, for ourselves and for our kids. Like, for example, for us, our kids being comfortable in Serbian and Spanish would be a realistic goal. Them being equally comfortable in English at this very moment or in the next 5 years is nice to have, but unlikely, because we are not working towards that goal. And is it gonna work? I think that if we approach this as a lifestyle rather than a project with deadline, it takes away the pressure and gives us opportunity to enjoy the process. And letting go of the outside expectations and simply being intentional about what are our family's needs is the most important. Like in our case, we need that all our kids in our family can understand and speak Serbian and Spanish, because it gives them opportunity to meet us, their parents, in full resolution with all our emotions, humor, confidence, which we only have and can transmit in our own mother tongue. So to give our kids opportunity to hear and speak it, yes, definitely, 100%. Putting fixed goals and or deadlines, I'm personally not a big fan of it, because the multilingual language journey is something special for every family, for every kid, and should be something they do because they want to, not because they have to. So I hope this gives some ideas to those that are maybe in the same or similar situation, how to find new ways to bring the language and passion for it to our kids. I hope the listeners are also having more sense how complex and sensitive for everyone involved is language learning in this context. And if you have any questions or would like some help on your multilingual or bilingual journey, feel free to reach out. If you liked this episode, be sure to hit the like button. And if you did not till now, subscribe so you don't miss any episode that is to come. Also rate the show and stay tuned for the upcoming episodes.